So this case, just to wrap up, is going to be a watershed when it comes to election law. If the court rules against plaintiffs, it could really mean that no amount of partisan bias is truly unconstitutional. That the party in power can suppress the opposing party's vote. And so this case has really catalyzed scholars to expand the study of redistricting. And hopefully eventually there'll be a way to be able to measure this objectively. And the court will provide some guidance in this case, however it rules. But there are very powerful constitutional arguments on either side of the ledger. With that?
Well, I just want to go back. Thank you so much. That was fascinating. I just have a couple questions for you. I mean, do you think that this is going to affect the 2018 midterm elections in any way?
Well, I think that certainly it will lead to litigation, perhaps, that might. It all comes down to if people have redistricted, in a way that they have to have brought this challenge. But yes, perhaps. I mean, it may be too soon, right, for this to have any real meaningful effect on the midterms, but certainly going forward, I think that their decision here will definitely influence elections.
Well, I think just the fact that the case is currently pending in the Supreme Court has already affected other states. I think Pennsylvania and some other states have recently had some, gerrymandering cases that they've now stayed.
That's right.
Because this case is being considered. And so, I mean, I think they say that actually gives a greater preference to the Republicans in that one district. And so, I think it could have that.
Right.
That effect.
And Pennsylvania is the case in 2004 that went up, that their redistricting was affirmed by the Supreme Court.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, this obviously is going to influence if they have pending cases. In that regard, yes.
Okay, and one last question for you, because I thought it was fascinating. I don't understand if the Supreme Court and the judiciary doesn't have an ability to review this. I mean, to me, that's the whole point of checks and balances. If they don't, if you say that they just have to go and have a legislative solution to that, if the disenfranchised people can't get a vote in the legislature, how is this ever going to be rectified?
Yeah, it's a conundrum. I mean, part of it is they have the constitutional authority, the courts, to involve themselves, but the view was that if the court involves itself, now you have these unelected individuals who are now going to be overturning, because when you redistrict, it's a statute. They're passing a law, and they're saying, well, we're now involving ourselves in the legislative process, and we have a separation of powers issue. But you're right, if you're allowed to, that's why they focus the standard on it has to be this pervasive.
Right.
And that, I think, is the concern of the states who are trying to uphold their redistricting scheme, is that they don't lower that bar to permit, anytime there's a challenge or anytime there's the slightest whiff of a political influence. Because, and this was said at oral argument also, obviously politics is going to play a part in how you redistrict. It's going to play a part. But the question is not whether it plays a part, but whether it plays so pervasive a part that it keeps down the other side's votes for an extreme length of time as well. So, I mean, it's a pretty high standard, and I think the concern is that the Supreme Court not lower that standard in order to prevent the separation of powers problem that might result.
Well, that's great. I can't wait to see what ends up happening with that.